Have you ever felt like something inside you woke up while the rest of the world kept sleeping? That quiet realization that you're no longer satisfied with the noise, the distractions, or the shallow chase for approval. It's not madness. It's not isolation. It's awakening. The moment your soul remembers who you truly are. It doesn't happen in crowds or under bright lights. It happens in silence, in stillness, in the moments where your heart whispers truths your mind never dared to hear. You begin to see through the illusions, the endless cycle of wanting more, proving yourself, pretending to be fine. You start noticing how much of life is built on fear, comparison, and the desperate need to be seen. And yet, when you awaken, you no longer crave to be seen. You crave peace, you crave authenticity, you crave truth. That's when you start realizing, not everyone will understand this version of you. Not everyone will see what you now see, and that's where the real challenge begins. Because the more you awaken, the more alone you may feel. You'll notice people trying to pull you back into their chaos, questioning your calmness, mocking your silence, doubting your stillness. They'll say you've changed, as if it's something wrong. But awakening isn't about becoming better than others. It's about becoming whole within yourself. It's about remembering that peace was always your natural state, and the world only taught you to forget it. Yet there's something most people don't tell you about awakening. Not everything sacred should be shared. The moment you start revealing too much, you open the door for misunderstanding, judgment, and energy that can drain your spirit. You might feel tempted to explain what you're experiencing, to help others see what you see, but the truth is, your awakening is not meant for everyone to understand. It's not a public journey, it's a sacred one. When you speak too soon about what you've discovered, you expose it to those who can't see beyond the surface. They'll label it, question it, or dismiss it, not because they're cruel, but because they can't feel what you feel. They haven't touched that depth within themselves yet. And when you give sacred truths to unready ears, they lose their power. Silence protects what words cannot. The awakened soul learns to move in quiet strength. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to explain your peace. You don't need to justify your transformation. Real power doesn't demand recognition. It radiates effortlessly. It's in the way you respond instead of react. It's in the way you forgive instead of fight. It's in the way you choose solitude over noise, peace over chaos, and truth over comfort. So protect your awakening. Guard it like sacred fire. The more you keep it safe, the brighter it burns. Let your silence become your message. Let your presence be your proof. Because when you no longer seek to be understood, you become untouchable. The noise of the world can no longer shake you. The opinions of others can no longer define you. Stay till the end, because what you'll discover here is not just what to keep private. It's how to protect the most powerful thing you'll ever possess, your spiritual freedom. And once you understand that, no one will ever be able to take your peace away again. The first thing you must protect is the depth of your awareness. Once your mind awakens, you begin to see everything differently. You see through conversations that once felt normal. You notice the intentions behind words, the patterns behind actions, and the energy that hides behind smiles. You start recognizing the invisible, the emotional undercurrents that guide people without them even realizing it. What once felt random now feels calculated. What once seemed simple now reveals layers of truth. And this awareness, though liberating, can also isolate you if you don't handle it wisely. Most people are not ready to see life at the depth that you now perceive it. They are still attached to illusions that make them feel safe. They rely on the same stories, beliefs, and distractions that once comforted you before your awakening began. If you try to pull those illusions away before they are ready, you don't help them. You wound them. The truth that awakens one person can destroy another. So when you reveal the depth of your awareness to those who are still asleep, they won't understand. They may resist you, mock you, or distance themselves, not because they are cruel, but because they're scared. Psychology teaches us that the mind protects itself from what threatens its sense of identity. When you show people a reality that challenges their beliefs, it feels like an attack on who they are. They reject it instantly, not because they hate the truth, but because they aren't ready to face it. That's why the awakened must move silently. You see, but you do not need to say. You understand, but you do not need to convince. You feel deeply, but you do not need to explain it to be valid. This silence isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows their value doesn't depend on being understood. Real awareness doesn't need to be advertised. The deeper you see, the less you talk. The wiser you become, the more you let life unfold without interference. You no longer argue for truth, you embody it. You no longer need to prove your insight. Your energy speaks louder than any explanation. When you protect the depth of your awareness, you preserve your peace. Every time you explain yourself to those who cannot hear you, you drain your spirit. Every time you try to awaken someone who isn't ready, you walk backward into their world instead of forward into your own. You must learn to observe without reacting, to understand without speaking, to love without needing to be right. That is mastery. Let your awareness become your silent teacher. Let your calmness become the proof of your depth. People will feel it without you ever needing to say a word. They'll sense your energy before they hear your thoughts. That is the quiet power of the awakened. Invisible to the shallow eye, but undeniable to the soul. Stay humble in your knowing. Stay grounded in your light. Not everyone deserves to know how far you've come, because not everyone has the capacity to meet you there. Guard your awareness like a sacred flame, steady, unwavering, and untouched by the winds of misunderstanding. The more you protect it, the brighter it grows, and the more it will guide you toward a life that no longer needs to be explained, only lived. The second thing you must never reveal is your spiritual practices. The methods, rituals, or inner disciplines that connect you to your higher self are not meant for public display. They are sacred bridges between your consciousness and the divine. When you speak too openly about them, you allow external energy to interfere with what was meant to remain pure. What you practice in solitude is not performance, it's communion. It's your soul's private dialogue with the unseen. And when you expose it to curious eyes or skeptical minds, it begins to lose its sacred frequency. Spiritual practices are living energies. They are deeply personal, designed to awaken and balance your inner world in ways that words can never fully explain. But when shared carelessly, they become diluted. The moment you allow others to question, judge, or analyze what nourishes your spirit, you unconsciously invite doubt into your own energy field. The very thing that centers you becomes contaminated by comparison, and doubt is a silent thief. It erodes the sacredness of your practice from within. Psychologically, we often feel the urge to share what brings us peace because we seek connection. We want others to feel what we've felt, to see the light that changed us. But the truth is, your awakening path is custom built for your soul. What elevates you might confuse someone else. What calms your spirit might unsettle another. The moment you start adjusting your spiritual practices to fit the understanding of others, you shift from devotion to performance. And spirituality that seeks approval ceases to be spiritual. Protect your rituals, your meditations, your affirmations, your moments of prayer. Protect the silence where your heart meets stillness. That is your sacred temple, and not everyone is meant to enter. Every practice you do is like planting seeds in your consciousness. If you dig them up too soon to show someone how they're growing, you interrupt their process. Growth requires privacy. Healing requires stillness. Devotion requires secrecy. Let people wonder where your peace comes from. Let them ask why you remain calm in chaos, why you glow even in pain, why nothing seems to shake you anymore. You don't owe them an explanation. Let your energy be your testimony. The most powerful practitioners of spiritual truth are often the most silent ones. They don't broadcast their practices because their transformation speaks louder than any description. The world is full of people who want to imitate without understanding. When they see your calm, they'll want to copy your habits, not realizing it's not the ritual, but the intention that gives it power. The strength of your practice lies not in the technique, but in your connection to it. No one can replicate that. It's your personal alignment with the divine that makes it work. Guard it fiercely. Every breath of gratitude, every whispered affirmation, every silent prayer, These are sacred codes between you and something greater. They lose strength when exposed to noise, opinions, or disbelief. Keep them close to your heart. Let your spiritual work remain invisible but undeniable. True spirituality doesn't need to be seen, it needs to be lived. When your devotion stays private, its energy multiplies, it roots deeper, it transforms you quietly, powerfully, completely. And in time, the world will feel your light, not because you shared your practices, but because you became the living result of them. The third thing you must never reveal is your inner battles. The spiritual path is not made of constant peace. It is built through chaos, struggle, and the quiet storms that no one sees. Awakening exposes not only your light, but also your shadows. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you once buried under distractions and noise. But these battles are sacred. They are not weaknesses to be discussed, analyzed, or displayed. They are divine initiations that exist to purify your soul, not to entertain the curiosity of others. When you share your inner wars too soon, you open sacred wounds to energy that doesn't understand them. People may listen, but they cannot carry the weight of what your spirit is learning to release. Some will offer sympathy, others judgment, and some will unknowingly project their own fears onto your healing. What was once a private lesson becomes tangled in opinions, leaving your soul confused and drained. Not everyone has earned the right to witness your vulnerability, because not everyone will handle it with the care it deserves. Psychologically, the need to reveal your pain comes from the desire to be seen and validated. You want someone to understand the depth of what you're going through. But true healing doesn't need validation, it needs silence. Growth happens when you sit with your discomfort without seeking applause for your endurance. Your strength doesn't come from how loudly you can express your pain, but from how gracefully you can transform it into wisdom. Every wound you keep sacred becomes a doorway to power. When you fight your internal battles in silence, you allow divine energy to work without interference. You stop trying to explain what even words can't contain. You let the pain teach you instead of defining you. And one day you realize that the very moments that broke you were the moments that rebuilt you stronger than ever, not because someone helped you through it, but because you faced it alone, with nothing but your spirit to guide you. The quiet strength that comes from surviving your own storms cannot be faked or taught. It is a vibration that others feel the moment you walk into a room. It's in your calmness, in the way you no longer react to things that used to control you. That kind of strength doesn't need to explain itself. It radiates naturally. When you protect your inner battles, you protect your spiritual evolution. You keep the sacred alchemy between you and the divine pure and undisturbed. Let people see your light, not your wounds. Let them witness your composure, not your chaos. Your pain is not for public consumption. It's the sacred soil from which your wisdom grows. Every time you choose silence over exposure, your spirit gains clarity. Every time you withhold your pain from the world, you reclaim your power from it. The world doesn't need to know what broke you. It will feel what you've become because of it. Your healing is not a performance. It's a sacred transformation. When you protect your inner struggles from the noise of the world, you give yourself the space to rise freely. The less you speak of your suffering, the more it strengthens you. Because what is kept in silence grows in power, and what is healed in private glows forever in peace. The fourth thing you must never reveal is your future vision. Once you awaken, your intuition sharpens. You begin to sense where life is guiding you, what your purpose is shaping into, and the kind of reality your soul is preparing to manifest. This inner knowing feels sacred, almost electric, but that is exactly why it must be protected. When you speak too early about what you're creating, you release the energy that fuels it. You invite interference, doubt, and energies that can distort the purity of your direction. Not every vision is meant to be spoken before it becomes solid. Some must stay in the dark until they bloom. Every idea, dream, and divine inspiration carries its own vibration. When it first arrives, it's fragile, like a seed freshly planted in soil. It needs time to take root before it can survive the elements. But when you expose that seed to the external world too soon, you allow the harsh winds of opinions, fears, and disbelief to weaken it. People may not mean harm, but their projections carry energy. Every "are you sure?" or "that sounds impossible" subtly chips away at your faith. And if you absorb that doubt, your vision begins to fade. Psychologically, the mind feeds on reinforcement. When you speak your plans aloud, your brain feels rewarded, as if you've already achieved them. That false satisfaction drains your drive. You lose the hunger that was meant to push you into action. This is why those who talk too much about their future often lose momentum, because they've spent their energy announcing instead of building. The awakened understand this. They act in silence, letting results speak instead of promises. Your vision is a conversation between your soul and the divine. It's not a group discussion. It's guidance meant for your steps alone. The more you guard it, the clearer it becomes. The more you protect it, the faster it manifests. There's power in privacy, the kind of power that grows quietly until it's unstoppable. That's why those who move in silence often achieve the impossible. Their focus stays intact because it isn't scattered by validation or diluted by opinions. The world loves to question what it cannot see. When you share your dreams prematurely, you invite energy that can't comprehend your calling. Some will misunderstand, some will envy, and some will unconsciously wish it away. Not out of malice, but because they cannot imagine the greatness you've been shown. Their disbelief becomes resistance, and that resistance can delay your path. Silence, then, becomes a spiritual shield. It keeps your energy undisturbed and your purpose protected. You don't need to prove what's coming. You don't need to announce where you're heading. Let your future surprise those who doubted you. Let your actions reveal what your words never had to. The deepest transformations happen behind closed doors, in the quiet hours where no one is watching. Protect those hours. Protect that fire. Let your vision grow in peace until it becomes undeniable. When you learn to move without announcing, to plan without boasting, to manifest without revealing, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing approval and start building legacy. You stop asking who will understand and start trusting the higher intelligence that gave you the vision in the first place. Keep your eyes on that light within you. Let it guide you silently, because when your vision is protected, it becomes prophecy, and no one can take from you what they never knew existed. The fifth thing you must never reveal is the extent of your spiritual power. When you awaken, something profound begins to awaken within you, an energy that no longer reacts, but creates. You begin to influence your environment without forcing it. Attract people and experiences that align with your vibration, and sense things before they happen. Notice how your calm changes a room, how your words carry weight, and how your silence unsettles those who still live in noise. This power is not physical, it's energetic. It flows from alignment with the divine. And because it's unseen, it must be guarded with absolute humility. The moment you try to show it, you weaken it. The moment you boast about it, it slips away. True power doesn't need to be proven. It exists beyond recognition. The spiritually awake understand that what they hold is not for domination, but for healing. It's not about control, but about harmony. It's the ability to move through chaos without being moved by it, to see truth without becoming arrogant with it, to love without needing anything in return. That is power in its purest form, invisible yet undeniable. Psychologically, the ego craves acknowledgement. It wants to feel superior, validated, seen as special. But the awakened soul must constantly dissolve that desire, because the moment power serves the ego, it becomes corruption, not consciousness. The higher you rise spiritually, the quieter you must become, not because you are afraid, but because you understand that the sacred loses its power in the presence of vanity. Your energy speaks more clearly in silence than any words ever could. The world doesn't need to know the depth of your spiritual strength. It only needs to feel the peace it creates. Those who brag about their power lose its purity. Those who honor it silently amplify it. Spiritual energy doesn't respond to noise. It thrives in humility. It's not about demonstrating control over others, but mastering yourself. It's about knowing that the power to heal, to attract, to manifest is not yours. It flows through you. The moment you start claiming it as personal, it begins to fade. You are a vessel of energy, not its owner. The divine works through you when you stop trying to use it for recognition. The more you let go of the need to be powerful, the more powerful you become. It's the paradox of awakening. You rise higher the moment you stop reaching. You influence more deeply the moment you stop trying to impress. Keep your spiritual power in quiet service. Let your actions, your presence, your peace be the evidence of your evolution. You don't need to speak about your gifts. Those who are meant to feel them already will. The universe doesn't need you to prove anything. It only asks you to stay aligned, disciplined, and humble. When you protect your spiritual power from exposure, it grows stronger. It sharpens your intuition, deepens your peace, and strengthens your ability to create harmony in every space you enter. You no longer need to convince anyone of your strength because your vibration does that for you. True power is invisible, steady, and selfless. It does not seek attention. It transforms reality in silence. And when you finally understand that, you become untouchable. Not because you hide your power, but because you've mastered it. When you've learned to protect your awareness, your practices, your battles, your vision, and your power, something extraordinary begins to happen. You reach a level of spiritual maturity where silence becomes your natural state. You no longer rush to explain yourself. You no longer fight to be understood. You no longer waste energy defending your choices or proving your growth. You realize that the truth you carry doesn't need validation. It stands strong on its own, untouched by opinion, untouched by doubt. And in that silence, you find a peace that the world cannot offer and cannot take away. The awakened soul understands that the highest form of strength is quiet presence. The world teaches you to announce, to prove, to compete, to show, but spirituality teaches you to release, to detach, to simply be. When you no longer depend on the world's recognition, you become free from its control. Nothing anyone says can touch you because you've stopped seeking their understanding. You exist in your own alignment, guided by something higher than approval, truth. Psychologically, this is the point where your ego dissolves into awareness. The noise of identity fades. You stop reacting to criticism and stop craving validation because both are forms of dependency. Your emotions stabilize, your decisions become clear, and your focus sharpens. You realize that everything external is temporary, and everything internal is eternal. This shift in consciousness transforms not just how you see the world, but how you move within it. You stop trying to fit in because you finally understand. You were never meant to. The silence of the awakened is not emptiness, it's fullness. It's not withdrawal, it's mastery. You've learned to listen more than you speak, to observe more than you react, to understand more than you judge. This doesn't make you distant. It makes you powerful in a way most cannot comprehend. Your silence becomes magnetic. People sense something in you they can't explain. A depth, a calmness, a gravity. That's the mark of someone who has learned that the truest form of communication is energy, not words. When you no longer reveal what's sacred, you move through life differently. You carry yourself with quiet confidence. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You love deeply, but without attachment. You give freely, but without depletion. Everything you do becomes intentional because you are no longer driven by the need to be seen. You are driven by purpose. And purpose doesn't shout. It moves in silence, guided by clarity and trust. This is where real freedom begins. When you protect what's sacred within you, you no longer live at the mercy of others' perceptions. You stop explaining your peace. You stop apologizing for your growth. You stop hiding your light out of fear of judgment. Instead, you live anchored in your truth, fully aware that not everyone will understand, and that's perfectly fine. You become the stillness in a world that can't stop moving. You become the calm in a storm that never ends. You become the reminder that power doesn't come from what you show, but from what you preserve. And in that preservation, you transcend. Because when you learn to keep your inner world untouched by noise, you discover the deepest truth of all. That silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of strength. There comes a point when you realize that spiritual awakening was never about learning more. It was about unlearning everything that kept you asleep. You begin to see that true wisdom isn't about knowing every answer. It's about releasing every illusion. The deeper you awaken, the simpler you become. You stop complicating your peace. You stop chasing what doesn't feed your soul. You start choosing stillness over stimulation, truth over comfort, solitude over company that drains your energy. You begin to crave nothing but authenticity in your relationships, in your choices, and in yourself. That simplicity is not weakness, it's refinement. It's the purification of everything false that once controlled you. When the noise fades, your inner voice becomes louder, clearer, and more precise. You realize how much energy you wasted trying to prove yourself, trying to be liked, trying to be understood. Now, you see the truth, that real strength is not in convincing others of your worth, but in knowing it so deeply that silence becomes your proof. This is the peace the world is searching for but cannot find, because it cannot be bought, copied, or imitated. It can only be earned through awakening. Psychologically, when your mind reaches this level of consciousness, it detaches from emotional chaos. You no longer allow people to trigger you because you recognize that everything they project is a reflection of their own inner state, not yours. You stop taking things personally. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop negotiating your values. You start realizing that peace isn't something to find, it's something you protect. This shift marks the moment you step fully into your power. You are no longer a reactor, you are a creator. You begin to move differently. You walk slower but with certainty. You speak less but with purpose. You love quietly but deeply. You trust yourself fully, not because life got easier, but because you stopped doubting your alignment with it. You know that everything unfolding before you is not random, it's responding to your vibration, so you focus not on control, but on clarity. You maintain your energy, your focus, your faith. You stop forcing outcomes because you finally understand that the universe mirrors your internal state. And now, peace is no longer something you practice, it's something you have become. You've stopped chasing spiritual highs, and instead, live in steady awareness. You no longer seek signs because you've learned to trust timing. You no longer beg for doors to open because you know what's meant for you will never need to be forced. You no longer worry about losing anything because you've realized that what is truly yours vibrates on your frequency and will always find its way back. This is the power of a silent, awakened soul. It doesn't shout, it radiates. It doesn't seek validation, it inspires it. It doesn't move from fear, it moves from faith. You've become the embodiment of balance, grounded yet limitless, humble yet unshakably strong. And the more you rest in this energy, the more the world bends in your favor. Because life does not reward noise, it responds to alignment. When your spirit is quiet, the universe listens. When your energy is pure, everything begins to flow toward you. That is the beauty of awakening. Not in what you gain, but in what you finally stop needing. When you reach this level of awareness, you begin to understand that most of what once consumed you was never truly real. The anxiety, the fear, the constant comparison, all illusions born from a mind disconnected from the present moment. The awakened mind sees that pain is not punishment, it's purification. It's the stripping away of everything that prevents you from standing in your true essence. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every failure was never meant to break you. It was meant to cleanse you of illusions you were never meant to carry. You begin to thank the experiences that once hurt you because you finally see their sacred purpose. They pushed you toward yourself. There's a deep stillness that forms within you when you no longer resist life. You stop trying to control every detail, and instead begin to align with the flow of existence. You notice how peace no longer depends on what's happening around you, but on how rooted you are within yourself. This is the moment when your external world starts to mirror your internal balance. People sense your calm before you even speak. Situations that once disturbed you lose their power. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase, you attract. This is emotional mastery, not in suppressing your feelings, but in owning them so completely that they no longer own you. The more you surrender to this truth, the lighter you become. The ego begins to dissolve, And what remains is pure awareness, unshaken, unbothered, unbreakable. You no longer define yourself by your past or your pain. You stop identifying with roles, titles, and opinions. You see yourself not as a name or an identity, but as consciousness expressing itself through a human form. That realization changes everything. You stop trying to prove who you are and simply start being who you are. That's the ultimate liberation, to live from authenticity so deep that no external judgment can distort your peace. Your silence becomes your superpower. You realize you don't have to explain your evolution to those who haven't met themselves yet. You no longer fight to be understood because you finally understand yourself. You stop needing closure because your clarity is enough. You stop defending your peace because you've built it so strong that no chaos can enter. You no longer seek permission to be whole, you just are. And in that stillness, your energy becomes magnetic. Opportunities, people, and moments start aligning effortlessly with your vibration. You begin to experience the quiet magic of divine timing, where everything arrives not a moment too soon or too late, but precisely when you are ready. You no longer beg the universe for blessings because you've become a living frequency of them. This is what it means to embody your awakening, to exist in a state of flow so deep that you no longer chase life. Life flows through you. The awakened soul understands that the goal was never to escape the human experience, but to master it, to walk through pain without losing grace, to love without attachment, to give without expectation, to live without fear. This is what true power looks like. Not dominance, but detachment. Not control, but alignment. You are no longer merely surviving life, you are co-creating it with every thought, every emotion, every breath. And in this space of awareness, you finally see it. Everything you've been seeking was never outside you. It was always waiting to be awakened within.